Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for our weekly Thursday training call. In today's call, we're going to be covering open house flyers, and I'm going to show you a couple of tips and tricks for getting around them pretty fast. But beyond that, if you do have questions, make sure to enter them into the questions area of your GoToMeeting toolbar. And if you can't find that, the GoToMeeting toolbar should be a little orange arrow up at the top right corner of your screen if it's collapsed. You can click on that arrow and it'll open up the bar, and then you'll see a questions area there. Go ahead and type those questions in there on any scenarios you'd like to see or any questions you have as we're going through this, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So for those of you who are brand new to building an open house flyer, the way you do it is you're going to do it as a new partner. This is the area that offers the co-branding, so you can do either an open house presentation or you can do a seller buy down. And the seller buy down is a permanent seller buy down, just so you know. We'll cover that in our next training call, actually. But for today, we're going to focus specifically on the open house flyer. So I'm going to go ahead and click New Partner. And let's go ahead and enter a name for my realtor partner. And then what I'm going to do at the same time is I'm going to show you how you can gather all this information. Normally, you're going to get it from either an MLS link or you're going to go to something like realtor.com and find your listing. So right now, I'm just going to do a broad search. And here's one in Mission Viejo that I can use, so I'll go ahead and use that one. Now, the important part about doing this is that there's a couple of things that you can get from these websites. One, and most importantly, are the images of the property. Those are definitely things that you want to capture. But two, you actually get listing agent information on many of them. Some of them will kind of narrow you down to having to do a submission of some sort here. So if you're using this to try and court new business, it gets a little more difficult because you have to do a bit more research to find out the realtor's information, emails, and so forth. But beyond that, sometimes they do give you quite a bit. Like this one here actually shows a listing agent, gives me a phone number for them, and then I've got a link to email the agent. That's probably just going to bring up a form submission. Yep, sure did. So I don't actually have an email for this person. So if I was trying to do this open house flyer as a brand new presentation, I hadn't met this person yet, I'd probably want to look up a bit more information about them. Now, the best place to look this stuff up is usually LinkedIn and Facebook. They'll have a good business presence there usually, and you'll often get lots of good images, logos, and their contact information. So for this case, I'm going to go ahead and just proceed without an email, knowing that I do have some listing agent information. So I'm going to just copy this and jump back over to Edge. And what I'm going to do is, one thing you'll notice is that inside Edge, you can run into some issues if you use special characters like an ampersand or a percent sign. So I'm going to replace that with just and. And for my last name, I'm just going to actually move that secondary realtor over to the last name field. Now the phone number I do have, so if I go back in there, I can copy this number. And then I'll just go ahead and paste it back into Edge. There we go. And then I'll select the type of partner this is. This is a realtor partner. Now, referred by, if you did have a referral for this, you'd definitely want to put that in here. If, like I'm doing right now, you're just kind of combing through the listing sites and trying to prepare presentations to attract realtors, I'd probably just put where I found the listing. So in this case, it would just be realtor.com. And the friendly name is actually pretty important. This is not a nickname for the property, a nickname for the client. It's actually a nickname for your presentation. So this helps you to identify what this is when you have multiple presentations for the same realtor partner. So when you're doing open house presentations, I always recommend for the friendly name that you use the property address. That way you can identify which property this is. And towards the end of the call, I'm going to show you how to generate a second open house presentation for the same realtor partner, but using a different street address. So I'll show you how they get grouped inside Edge. So for this one, I know that that is my property address. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it and jump back over to Edge and just paste it in there. Now, since I copied that, I can actually paste it again right here in the street address field. And this was in Mission Viejo, so I'll go ahead and put that in. Let's go find our zip code real quick. That's 92691. Oops, there we go. And now it's time for some of the property features. So at this point, I'm going to go back in here and just check it out. What's my asking price, square footage, all that kind of good stuff. And we can see our asking price at the top here. We got $655. Notice I didn't copy the dollar sign. Same thing I was talking about earlier. You want to stay away from special characters when you're pasting into Edge. So I will go ahead and just paste in that dollar amount. So there's actually a perfect example of what happens. So when I hit paste, you can see that it pastes in the asking price, but because there's a comma in there, it doesn't like it and it'll zero it out after I'm done. So you can see when I tab off this field, it zeroes it out. So the idea behind this is don't paste the comma. So I'll just go ahead and write it in. Edge automatically adds the dollar sign and the comma for me. So let's find out what our square footage is, and we can do this. Actually, it's pretty visible on this one. Oftentimes you do have to scroll down into the property details to find out, but in this case it's actually on the image right there, so I know it's 1,700 square feet. I know it's also 4-bedroom and 2 full baths. So I'll put in my square footage here, and it's 4 beds, 2 baths. And then listing link, this is for your information only. This doesn't show up on your presentation, but this is just a kind of a breadcrumb trail that you can follow back to your link. So what I did is I actually just copied the link in the top of my browser here, and I'm going to paste that into Edge. So what this means is that if I ever need to come back into this presentation and I need to find the original listing, I've got my link here that I can copy and paste into a browser to find the actual listing. Now the next step here would be to identify the features of the property. So I'm going to hit more features, and you can see we've got a whole bunch of them for you that are already preset. And then towards the bottom, there are 4 customizable features. So let's check out what we have here. Now things like the kitchen and dining room, they have a breakfast counter, a breakfast bar, they have a dining L and a family room. They do have a laundry room, and they list a couple more features here. You can see in the interior features, we've got a bathtub, ceiling fan, tile counters, all that kind of good stuff. So what I would do is jump back over to Edge, and I'll tell you probably the easiest way to do this. I've got them in multiple tabs right now, but the easiest way to do it is separate windows so that you can jump back and forth between the windows. For instance, if you have a second screen on your computer, you probably want to move this over to your second screen. That way you can just refer to it and start filling in the details. So I know you guys can't see my second screen, but I'm going to go ahead and pop it up there so I can see it. And then I will start filling in some of these features. And there was a family room, so I'm going to go ahead and add that one as a custom feature. Now, in order to show it on the presentation, you got to check the box next to it. They have a remodeled kitchen. And let's see, they had ceramic counters, so that's always good. Let's see, they do have a 2-car garage, so I'll go ahead and check that. It is a single story. And they have vaulted ceilings, so I'm going to put that as my 4th option here. Now, once you're done checking off all the items that you'd like to add, hit OK, and those will automatically be part of the report. So now I can proceed forward, and now it's time to capture images. So let's go back, and I'll drag this screen back over for you. And there's a couple of easy ways to do this. One is when you click on the images, usually it gives you a bunch of thumbnails, so you can select which ones you want to use. Generally, you want to use the one that's on the front. It's going to be the best picture of the front face of the house. And in order to capture this, you can right-click on it and do Save Image As. It's going to ask you where you want to save it. I'm just going to put it on my desktop, and I'm going to call this House Front. And I'm going to date it because I do enough of these. I've got a bunch of images on my computer. But you'll see it downloads, and this is actually going to show up, depending on whether you're using a Mac or a PC, it's going to show up in your downloads folder. So just make sure you're aware of where this is at. If you don't, you can always hit the little arrow here and hit Show in Finder or Show in Folder if you're on Windows, and it'll actually show you the, I'll show you what it looks like. it'll show you where it's located. So now I know that this is directly on my desktop because that's where I saved it to, but oftentimes this will get saved straight to your downloads folder. For a quick shortcut to get to your downloads folder in just about any browser, you can do Control-J, and that'll take you directly to your downloads. So let's close out of that one, and I'm going to go back into my Edge. I'm going to hit Browse so I can search for this. And there's my Housefront 1218. I'll go ahead and open that, and you can see that it's automatically pulled the image in there for me. Now, one thing I would tell you is the picture name here and the description do not show up on your presentation. Don't waste your time on these. Just leave them exactly as they are. There does need to be a name for your image, so just allow it to accept the default name that it puts in there. And I'll show you why this is important when we get towards the end of the presentation, because you're going to have to select this image. And without a picture name on it, it'll look like you don't have an image to select. So just leave the name as it comes in. And if you wanted to do multiple presentations for this person, you could upload additional images. Right now, only one property image will show on your finalized open house presentation. So if you're just doing a single open house, I would only advise upload one picture. That's good enough. That's the one you're going to use for your flyer. So now it's time to put in some products that we want to offer. So I'm watching the questions box. So if any of you want to see specific types of scenarios in here, do let me know. For now, I'm going to kind of put in some basics here. I'm going to put an FHA loan. I'm going to put a conventional at 5%. I'm going to put an 80-10-10, and I'm going to put a 5-1 ARM. So hopefully that'll kind of cover the gamut of everything that we want to show here. But if you do want to see other types of scenarios, do let me know, and I'll make sure those get addressed. So I'll call this FHA 30 fixed. And this is an FHA program, so I've got to click yes on the FHA question. Now, this is actually going to change pretty soon here. We're going to give you more options so you can actually select what type of government program it is. You'll have a drop-down selector that'll say FHA, VA, USDA, or even single premium. So we'll give you that option pretty soon here. But for now, you would just check yes for FHA. And then you're going to enter your down payment amount. So I'll put my 3.5% down. And my interest rate here, let's say I can get them about 4.5, and it's going to be a 30-year term. This is a fixed loan, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it at fixed. And it doesn't have an IO period or a balloon payment month, so I'm going to go ahead and leave those blank. And now I need to apply some closing costs. So first things first, before I do that, I'm going to deal with my upfront MIP. And in order to do that, I'm just going to click this little button. This allows you to toggle back and forth between dollar amount data entry and percentage. And for these, it's always best to use the percentage. Then you're going to get it calculated down to the dollar. Now, one thing to note, recent change in Edge, probably a couple of months ago, we added a feature that automatically takes this figure and only uses the whole dollar amount to finance into loan. So it doesn't finance in the cents anymore. You may have noticed a slight difference between what your origination system was showing and what Edge was showing in terms of the total financed amount. That was because Edge was showing the finance cents. We're not doing that anymore. So now it just finances the whole dollar, and the remaining 31 cents here will be called for at close. So I'll go ahead and finance that in. And before I move on, actually, let's go ahead and apply some closing costs here. There's two ways to do it. When you're looking at an open house presentation, you're not getting the details of all the closing costs. So if you want to, you can certainly ballpark these fees. You don't have to itemize. It certainly does save time when you itemize, because then you can have templates predefined that you can use for this. But when I say ballpark, I mean you can literally up here just put in $2,500 of APR costs, 15 days prepaid interest, $1,000 of prepaid escrows, and then maybe $1,000 in non-APR costs. Again, this is really not representative of a perfect dollar amount for this, but it's kind of a ballpark guess. It's good for marketing presentations. Now, if you want to get a little bit more detailed on it, you can hit the closing cost detail button. Now, I'll let you know that if you fill in these fields and then you do the closing cost detail, whatever you do in the detail is going to overwrite these fields. So you'll find that they'll be locked after you use the detail. So any changes that you want to make, you'd have to go back into the detail to do that. So I'll go into the detail, and I'm going to apply one of my FHA templates. So there's my FHA purchase. And you can see I've got them all fairly filled in. You know, some basic dollar amounts. I've got some pre-programmed percentage methods for my lenders and owners title insurance. And then I've got all my necessary fees for this type of program. Now, if I needed to make any changes or additions here, I could simply overwrite any of these. Say, for instance, my credit report is actually $30. I could put that in there. And if you do change a template, it's probably a good idea to save it as a new template. So if I make a change to this, I'd want to go in and hit Save as Template one more time. Susan's question, if I want to make an appraisal paid outside of close, how do I do that? So great question, Susan. I do have this come up quite often. So right now, as I have this labeled, it's going to call for this appraisal fee at close. And most times you're going to get it outside of close. So what I usually recommend if you're going to do that is add a custom fee, call it appraisal POC. And this is not an APR fee. It's not a prepaid. So we're going to leave those out and just hit OK. And then we're going to do a negative amount for that same dollar amount. This is going to level out our cash to close so it's correct, and this will allow you to show your client. Now, oftentimes I'll put this right next to the appraisal fee. You can't reorder these fees, so when I added a new fee, I automatically put it at the bottom here. But if I was building this item by item, I'd probably want to put them next to each other so that the client understands what's going on there. But this is something you can certainly address during your videos when you're presenting this to your realtor partners, is that this appraisal POC is just the appraisal paid outside of close, and that offsets the fee up here. Now, once you're done with this, hit Apply to Loan. And then you can continue on. Now, if there are points that you need to assess, you can still type in points. You can still change prepaid interest days, but you can see all these other fields here are still grayed out, and that's because they're showing what's inside the closing cost detail. So if I needed to make a change to these figures, I need to go in and change the actual line items. Final step is I need to make sure and put in my monthly costs. That's up to you whether you want to quote pity payments or P&I payments. Really, you want to gauge it depending on what your competition's doing. If you're seeing a lot of open house flyers in your area where people are just quoting P&I, you probably want to do the same. Now, there's an argument for quoting PITI even though others are quoting P&I, and that's just the transparency element. You know, it sets you apart from the other originators because you're showing here's what your real payment's going to be, your total payment. You know, if we're just quoting P&I, we're just quoting a minor portion of what you're paying. So when it comes down to it, if I'm a renter, I'm a first-time home buyer, and I'm kind of freaking out because I've got a mortgage payment coming up, and somebody has quoted me only a P&I payment, and I start basing my financial decisions on that. When I get to close, when I see my docs, I'm really gonna be freaking out because now I've got a much higher payment than I thought I would be paying. So my advice would be quote pity payments. And two reasons: it sets you apart and it gives you the transparency. But you can address that during your video, and I'm going to show you later on towards the end of this presentation where you can enter it in your payment notes field so that it displays right there next to the payments. So I will go ahead and put in my hazard insurance and property taxes. I like using factor percentages for these. This is always going to be an estimate. You're not going to know exactly what they're going to pay, especially when this is an open house presentation. So I like using factor percentages, so it just gives me a good ballpark amount for what I'm going to be expecting. Now, the final part of this is FHA mortgage insurance. A little bit different than conventional. Conventional mortgage insurance just has a 78% cutoff, but FHA doesn't, especially the high-value FHAs. You're required to carry the mortgage insurance for the life of the loan on the high-value ones. Now, if you are 90% or below, you actually only have to carry it for 11 years, so 132 months, and then if it is at 78%, it can drop off. So depending on what program you're doing, you'll have different variables that you're going to enter here. But this is a high value FHA. So I'm going to use my 1.35 factor. And then most importantly, on all government loans, the way the mortgage insurance is calculated is it's actually calculated on an average 12 months balance for the loan. Now, for the first payment, you obviously haven't had 12 months of balance. So it's actually looking for 12 months in the future, calculating the average balance of the loan during that period and basing the MI on that figure. Going forward, your second year is going to have the same MI, but then third year is going to be declining, fourth year will decline. It'll keep declining all the way through the loan until you get to the end. Now, when you do get to the end, you're going to find that that mortgage insurance is pretty small. So this is a great selling point for you to be an educator on what the mortgage process really looks like. I mean, there's obviously a huge stigma out there right now about FHA loans because people think, oh my God, I've got this $700 mortgage insurance payment and I've got to pay this for 30 years. Are you kidding me? Simply not true. You can educate them to show them exactly what that payment's doing over time. When we get to the finalized presentation, I'm going to show you what this payment stream looks like, and I'm going to show you what the amortization looks like so you can really get a good feeling of what this MI is doing over time. Now, in order to make that declining balance happen, you got to check this box, Calc MI on balance, and you can see my mortgage insurance payment actually went down from $711 to $705. Now, I can't stress enough, you would only use this on government loans. You do not check this box when you're doing conventional loans. Now, the final part of this is I need to tell Edge exactly how long the minimum number of months are. Again, only on government loans. I'm going to tell it has to go for the life of the loan. So I'm going to put 360 in here. Now, if this was a 90% loan, I would put 132 in here. That would tell Edge that it has to carry the mortgage insurance for 11 years. Then after that, if it's at 78%, it can drop the mortgage insurance. Now, for a owner-occupied property, MI is not tax deductible, so do not check this box unless you're doing a non-owner OC. A non-owner OC, they can actually still deduct the MI. Now I need to make sure and account for my reserves. Now, if you noticed back in my closing cost screen, I didn't have any reserves listed there. The reason is I'm going to allow Edge to calculate them for me based on the numbers I have up here. So if I've got 3 months of hazard insurance reserves and 2 months of tax reserves that I need to collect, when I enter these figures, it's automatically going to pop those back to the previous screen. So I'll show you what that looks like. When we go into the closing cost detail, you can see there's now fields at the bottom for the hazard insurance reserves and the tax reserves. These are grayed out because these are calculated fields that come from that screen that we were just on. So you can always delete these if you need to. It's going to clear those numbers that I just entered. But if I need to change these, I'm actually going to change the number of months rather than the individual field. So this product is done. I don't need to do anything more with this one. So now I'm going to put in a second product. Now with this one, I'm going to make this one a conventional 5% down. And to reduce some of the legwork, I'm going to use this copy button. Susan's question again, shouldn't you check collect 12 months hazard insurance premium on each purchase? Yes, absolutely, and especially on FHA. You're absolutely right, Susan. So I would have checked this one right here, and that'll automatically add a premium line in my closing cost detail. So if we go down to the bottom, you can see I now have a third one for the premium itself. So nice catch, thank you. All right, so back to our conventional. Because I don't want to have to do all the legwork, over and over again, I'm going to use this copy button. So I will copy my FHA program. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to change this toggle from yes to no. This now has become conventional. I can put in my 5% down, and I'll probably get a little bit higher rate on the conventional than I would for the FHA. So I'll go ahead and type in the rate that I have. And then if there were any modifications I needed to make to my closing cost detail, I could come in here and change it. Maybe I don't have a processing fee or something like that. But I've also got my reserves in there. They're all set. If there was a difference in the guidelines between FHA and conventional in terms of how many months of reserves I needed to collect, I would go ahead and modify them in the next screen. Now, because I used the copy button, my hazard insurance and my property tax came over without me having to do anything, but so did my MI. And I need to make sure and change this because now we're looking at a conventional mortgage insurance rather than FHA. So I'm going to hit that percentage button, and then you need to consult with your MI company or consult your guidelines. You probably already know exactly how much that factor is going to be, but generally it's going to be a little bit lower than what FHA is doing. So for a 5% down, I've seen it anywhere between 0.9 and 1.2. So I'm going to use 1 here. Now, very important, because this is not a government loan, I'm going to uncheck the Calc on balance box. I'm also going to remove the minimum number of months, and in this case, it won't really matter, but most conventional MI products do require you to carry it for 24 months. Then it can drop off at 78%. But a good majority of those loans will not be anywhere near 78% in 24 months. It's usually closer to, 9-10 years before it gets to that point on a high value loan like this. So I could simply delete this and I'd be fine. But if you were doing a very low value loan, say it's 81%, something like that, and you know that MI will hit 78% within that 24-month period of time, you would want to enter the 24 months here so you carry it a minimum of that 24. Now, if I needed to make any changes to my reserves, I can go ahead and change these fields, check or uncheck as needed. And then I can move to my next product. Now this one's going to be an 80-10-10. Actually, let's do the 5-1 first, and I'll show you why I'm doing it in this order in just a minute here. But when we're looking at this, it's up to you on how you want to present your loan products. But when you get to the finalized product, take a look at how the graphs look and eyeball the way your products look, because there's certain ways that you want to present this. I like presenting everything in kind of a cascade effect. So I'm showing highest to lowest or lowest to highest, something like that, where it makes it very easy for the client to isolate what product would be best for their financial situation. It's totally up to you, though. It's kind of a quirk I have, so feel free to do them in whatever order you want. But let's, matter of fact, I will go ahead and do the 80-10-10 first. So 80-10-10. Now 80-10-10s are a little tricky, and the reason is because each lien is actually singular inside Edge. So I'm going to build, actually I'm going to copy first so that I have all those fee templates in there. So I'll copy my FHA, and then I'm going to eliminate the FHA checkbox. But most importantly, this part right here, when I'm looking at my first lien, you have to look at this screen as only the first lien. What is my equity percentage compared to the first lien? Well, if I'm doing an 80% first lien, my equity percentage on that first lien would be 20%. So I need to put in my 20 there. That's going to make sure that I have the correct base loan amount for my first lien. Now, when I get to my second, I'm going to use half of this down payment figure, this 131. I'm literally going to divide that in half and use that as my loan amount for my second, because I know that's going to be 10%. And so we know it's going to be 65.5. Now in this 80% loan, let's put it back up to 4.625. I've already got my costs in there. No real changes need to be made, but I don't need mortgage insurance. So when I get to my MI side, I'm actually going to hit this and just zero it out. And it doesn't really matter if you clear these. If you've got no payment and no percentage, it won't apply any mortgage insurance. So you can leave these or delete them if you like. It's completely up to you. But the step to making this an 80-10-10 loan is I need to make sure and put in a second. So at the bottom here, I'm going to check the radio button that says, yes, it does include a second. Then I'm going to hit the right arrow, and it's going to ask me for my second lien. So this is not a refi. I'm going to go ahead and leave that. I do know it's 65.5. And let's say that this is a purchase money HELOC, and I can get them 4% right now. And my term, usually 25 years on those purchase money HELOCs. Now, here's where the quandary happens. It's up to you in terms of whether you want to show this as an adjustable mortgage or whether you want to show it as a fixed. Now, if you've eyeballed Prime for a while, you know it's been staying really static for a good long time. It's kind of acting like a fixed loan right now, but there is the chance that it can adjust going forward. So with a purchase money HELOC, you're based on Prime. It can adjust every month. Now, Prime has stayed very static for a long time. So your decision is whether you want to show this as a fixed loan or whether you want to do it as an ARM and predict some adjustments. I would tell you that for an open house presentation, I'd make it a fixed loan. They're not going to see the adjustments anyway, so I would just leave this as fixed interest only. In order to do that, that same amount you have for the term, you're going to put it in the interest only months. So this is going to be interest only for the life of the loan. Now, if you did want to schedule changes and adjustments in the rate, you can make this an ARM. Then you can hit your ARM details, and I'm going to select Prime, which is 3.25. Now, if I have a start rate of 4, I know that my margin is 0.75. And then I need to tell Edge how often I want it to adjust. Now, I can fill out these caps and adjustments up here to make it happen, or I can actually customize it, which is probably more preferable for doing the purchase money HELOCs. It's not going to move that much. So in this kind of a situation, I'd probably put, maybe at month 36, I want to see a 0.25% adjustment. And then I'll put another one out at month 60 because I want to see a 0.5% adjustment. And then maybe I'll add one at 120, and I'll actually bring it down minus a 0.25. So I kind of level it out here. And then maybe at month 180, I'll put in a 2% adjustment. So it just shows them what the potential is for what Prime could do. Now, if you've been eyeballing Prime for a while, you've seen that we're not anywhere near this rate over the last 7 or 8 years. So I don't think this is a realistic concern. However, it's certainly good to be able to put it out there for the borrower to let them know that it's a possibility. Worst case on any ARM is that it can rise to a life cap. And these purchase money HELOCs are usually 12 to 15% life cap. So if we do want to show that, we can put something in really late down the line, maybe month 280 or something, and just boost it up, and we can get whatever rate we want to show there. Now, I probably wouldn't use that, so I'm going to delete it, and then I'm going to hit OK. Now, my ARM is all set up, and my 80-10-10 is pretty much done. This area gives you just a space to put additional closing costs that are specific to that second lien. So if you wanted to show these, you could put them in here. You could also put them in the itemization on the first loan, and they're still going to look exactly the same. So completely up to you as to where you want to put them. This just kind of helps you separate them a little bit. And now I need to put in a fourth product. Now my fourth product is going to be my 5/1 ARM. And I'll go ahead and use that copy button again, copy my FHA. I'll change the toggle so it's no longer an FHA. And let's say for this product, I can do the 5% down type of deal that I did with my other conventional 5%. But as an ARM, I can get a lot lower rate. So let's say I can get maybe 3.75. And then I'm going to change this from fixed to ARM. Now, when doing an open house presentation, remember I mentioned earlier, you're not going to see a payment stream on there. And the APR is going to be calculated based on whatever payment stream you select. So if you choose worst case and you fill out all these caps, you're going to find that your ARM is going to have a really high APR, because what it's going to assume is that at that first adjustment point, it adjusts to the first cap. And then it continues to adjust to the cap every time it adjusts until it gets to the life cap. So that's what these guys are right here. So the first cap is right there. The periodic cap is how much it adjusts in every segment that it does adjust. And then the max rate is the total it can get to. Now, if this was a 5.25 loan, I would enter a 5 here, a 2 here, and then I would enter 5 plus the start rate to give me my max rate. So 5 plus 3.75. 8.375 is my max. Now the first adjustment month on a 5/1 ARM, that's going to be month 61. That's going to be the first time the rate changes. How often does it change? This depends on what index you're choosing. So if you're using the 1-year LIBOR, that's going to adjust every 12 months. Same thing with the MTA. Now if you're using the 6-month LIBOR, you would put in 6 right here. You're going to tell Edge that it's only going to adjust every 6 months instead of every year. But in this case, I will choose the 1-year LIBOR, so I'm going to do 12 months. And the margin, you pull this from your rate sheet, but generally you're going to be right around 2.25 for your margin. And then let's select the index. I'm going to go ahead and select that 1-year LIBOR. Now, if there's a floor rate that it can't go below, you can put that in here. Again, this will be on your rate sheet as well. But oftentimes, especially when you're doing an open house flyer, you really don't need this because you're going to predict upward adjustments rather than downward. Now, if I leave this at worst case right now, which I'm going to do just so you can see what it looks like on the finalized presentation, we're going to find a really high APR. But I'm going to show you how to battle that. Now, this one is going to have MI, so I'll go ahead and put that 1% factor like I did on the other conventional. I am going to clear the checkbox because this is a conventional, and I'm going to remove the minimum number of months for the MI to calculate. Now, let's see what we've got here. Now, right now, when we look at the analysis summary screen, we're seeing the difference in the payments. When we get to the actual open house presentation, we're going to see the total payments against each other. So let's continue forward, and we'll come back to this if we need to discuss this further. But generally, this is giving you an idea of how each of these loans is going to perform. My 80-10-10 is my best solution for any of the metrics I'm looking at. So that one, definitely, I know that that's what I would recommend for my client. However, it just kind of depends on what they're willing to bring in. They've got to bring in 10% down on this one, whereas the other ones are 5% or less. So it's a talking point for you and your client. But good idea to be able to show them all the options that are available to them, especially when you're doing an open house presentation and you really don't know what the borrower is going to qualify for. Good idea to show them the gamut of the type of programs that you can offer. Now we get into our partner's branding information. So things like the company name. I'm going to go back to that. Oops, I have it on another window here. There it is. Okay. So I'll go back to my realtor.com here. And if I want to find out things like the logo, I mean, I have a photo right here, but I think if I click on it, it might take me to their website. There we go. So we do have their website, and we can get a little bit more information about what they do. And what their names are, you know, all that kind of good stuff. But they are a very specific group. So I just got their email address by going to their website. So that's good news. Let's hop back over to Edge. And I'm going to pop that email address in there. And then I'll put the name of their firm in here. And if I do have things like fax and cell phone, if I can glean those off the page, I'm going to go ahead and put them in. The licensing information is actually kind of important because this will show with the rest of their contact information on that co-branded presentation. So we should, and let me get rid of that so I stop going to it. We should see in here, they would have their licensing information listed somewhere. So it's usually somewhere towards the bottom. And let's see what they've got. So they don't, this website is actually pretty far out of compliance. So this would be one where I would call this person and I would ask them, you know, what's your DRE number? What are your licenses? Because I want to build this presentation for you. Now you can certainly leave it out for the first contact with them and just advise them that you can fill in additional contact information that you can get directly from them. But it might be, you know, somewhere in the contact page or something like that. They might have this. And it looks like they don't. So again, this is one of those where a little out of compliance. This would probably be a good talking point for the realtor. Let them know that, hey, you need to have your licensing on everything you have out there. And if you don't, people can call you on the carpet for it. But we'll jump back over to Edge and we'll assume that we're going to pick up their license from them when we call them on the phone. We do know what their website is. And that was because we have their contact page here. And it's really just this part right here. So I will put it in their website field. And actually, it's not a www, so I'll go ahead and remove that. But that will take me directly to their website. That's also going to post on the contact information area. Now, if I do have their street address available, which it didn't look like it was available on that website, I can put it in here. But this might be one of those things where when I call them and ask them for the licensing, I'm going to ask them for their street address too. But again, not terribly important. I mean, most people don't go to the realtor's office. Most people meet the realtor at a property. So I like to reuse this field for other things. So instead of putting a street address here, I'll put something like best realtor team in town. And then I'm just going to leave the other fields blank. And you'll see why I do this, because it actually shows up right beneath the rest of the contact information on that open house presentation. Now I need a headshot and a logo for this realtor partner. Now if I jump back over to their website, I know that I do have a headshot for them. And let's go back to just the main website. And I can actually collect this if I want to. I can right click on it and just upload it in there. But they actually had a better image back on the MLS listing. So if I look at it, that's actually shaped perfect for what the Edge presentations do. So I'm going to right click on it, save image as, and I'm going to call it our headshot. Save it on my desktop. Then I will jump back over into Edge. And I'm going to browse and find that file I just saved. And there's my R headshot. Hit open. Now you can see the shape of the placeholder. It looks like one of those wallet size images that you use. So if you have a headshot style image, it's always going to fit better. And that's the reason I didn't choose the other one that we saw over here. This is a very wide image, and it's going to be really small inside that image placeholder because it doesn't have enough height to fill out the total box. So that's why I opted for the wallet shaped one. Now a logo, if we do have their logo, and usually we can get it from their website. So let's go back up here. And actually, the name of this company is actually Regency Real Estate Brokers. So that's probably what I want to put into the company name field back in the previous section. And I could probably put the whole thing actually. And then if I can grab a logo from their site, great. It doesn't look like they have a logo that's isolated. That is their logo right there, but it's overlaid on a couple of other things. So what I might do is just do a Google search. Regency Real Estate logo. There we go. That's our image right there. That's the one we want. So if I click on that, now I've got a great copy of an image I can use. I can right click on it, save image as, and that's probably a pretty good name. I'll just get rid of the numbers there and hit save. So now let's jump back over to Edge, to my logo area. I'm going to browse and go find that image I just saved and hit open. And you can see now I've got everything in there. I've got a logo, a headshot, and keep in mind, I've never talked to this person. So I have no idea, anything about their company. I don't know anything about what they're doing. I've just gotten all this information from looking at their site, looking at realtor.com for property information, and then doing basic Google search for a logo. Now you can find, like I said earlier, you can find more detailed contact information on LinkedIn. You might even be able to find better images that you can use, but certainly a great resource if you're missing detail on this. Now the last step here is we're going to select what we're going to do, and we're going to do an open house flyer. We're not doing a seller buy down. Now the seller buy down does allow you to show what the effects are of a permanent buy down versus traditional financing. And if you want to take a look at how that works, click on the help button up at the top right here. This is going to open up our support center. And if you haven't been here before, I would highly encourage you to step in every now and then and see what's going on in here. We do add new videos all the time. You can see we have our winter workshop that's been going on now for 2 weeks. This is a compilation of 12 different individual trainings that we've been doing morning and afternoon that show you specifics on how to do things like the cost of waiting, how to set up your master template slides, how to do your purchase templates, how to do FHA versus conventional, all that kind of good stuff. It's all in there, and we are recording them, so I'll have a playlist ready for you when we're done with this. But you can see that there's other playlists in here that can be very helpful as well. We've got basic sales training that Dave Savage does, and this is a playlist of items that, if you're just getting into mortgage coaching, you want to understand how you position this presentation in your sales process. These are great videos to start with. There's also scripts that are available. This is going to give you scripting for how to show the videos, how to talk to the clients, all kinds of goodies in here. We've got support quick hits, which are just little very short videos that talk about individual items, like what should I do if my rate watch binoculars aren't coming up today? There's a quick video that shows you how to solve that problem. We've got advanced training in here. And then we've got Savage Coaching the Coaches. That's Dave Savage, and he's talking to industry leaders, and it's very short interviews where he's coaching them on specific tactics. Very good stuff, definitely worth a watch. And then we have our compliance quick hits, which were quick hits from our Mitch Kiter call that happened last month. And actually, it's a little bit longer than that, I guess. But these are all little samples from the hour-long coaching call that we've segmented out to answer specific questions about things like MSAs, what's going to happen in the future, what are we looking at when the GFE changes, all this kind of good stuff is in here. And it's a playlist of lots of videos, so you can pick and choose which ones you want to watch. But what I was talking about earlier, if you wanted to find that seller buy down presentation, you wanted to figure out how to do that, just type in seller or seller buy down and hit search. And you'll see there it is right there, creating a seller buy down flyer in Edge. And then you see that the coaching call archive comes up very often when you do a search. And the reason for this is this archive has all the calls that we do on Thursdays, Tuesdays, has our Friday calls, has our winter workshops. So if you've missed some of those and you want to go back and view them, you can view them in here. But the reason it's going to come up in most of your searches is because we've probably done trainings on this for you during these Thursday trainings. So it's a long list of goodies, but if you want to narrow it down to what you're specifically searching for, you can always do Control F on your keyboard. And that's going to bring up a search bar that allows you to search on this web page. So if I wanted to search buy down, for instance, you can see once I started searching that, there's a Thursday training call covering the seller buy down flyer and how to explain it. Definitely worth a watch if you're interested in showing permanent buy downs. Now, those are most effective right now in the very high dollar markets and for properties that have been sitting too long. obviously the last thing a seller wants to do is reduce the price again, but that's what the realtor is going to recommend for them so they can move the property. The seller buy down is an alternate strategy where instead of reducing the price, they're going to credit towards a lower rate to attract more borrowers. They can sell it at asking price. Now, this is very attractive to realtors because they're going to commission off that full price rather than at the reduced price. So if you're interested in learning more about that, come into this knowledge base and check it out. All right, so let's complete our flyer real quick here. You can see that I've got 4 products that I have entered. Now, if I don't want to show one of them, I can always uncheck it and it won't show up on the presentation. For now, I'm going to leave them all there. And as I continue forward, I'm given the option to give this a title. So for instance, I know this isn't on the ocean, but I'll put beautiful ocean view. Yeah, gotta spell it right, Jake. There we go. Now, pricing label is asking you, how do you want to display the price? Is this an asking price? Is this a list price? Is this a sales price? You know, a price offered? I mean, how do you want to talk about? So in this case, I'm just going to put list. Now, the price will automatically be appended to this based on the price you entered back in the property details. So you don't need to put it a second time here. This is just a label to put next to the price on the flyer. Now, these are the payment notes I was telling you about. Now, these have a double asterisk next to them on your presentation, and they're going to have double asterisk right next to the monthly payments. So this is the place where you'd put payment includes all applicable. And I might even go even farther. Payment includes hazard insurance, property tax, and mortgage insurance. And I think one thing I would recommend is put estimated payment. So now that I've got that in there, I'm going to continue on, and this is the point where we need to choose the image that we want to use. Remember, we uploaded a picture of the house, but in this step, if we don't select an image, there's going to be no image on this presentation. So we've got to make sure and click on the one here that we saved. That's going to indicate it's the one we're supposed to use. Now, the whole reason for giving you multiple image placeholders to upload is because if you wanted to do a seller buy down and an open house under the same presentation, you can, and you can actually use different images for each if you want to. So we give you the ability to upload multiple images in case you want to cycle them out, as needed. In this case, I only uploaded one, and this is actually the reason why I told you it's very important to leave that image name the same. If I erase that image name back in my property detail screen, I would see this as blank, and it wouldn't look like I'd have an image to select. I'd just see a blank line right here. So just leave the name as it is when you import the file, and you'll see it here to be able to select it. Now, a couple little details I got to take care of before I'm ready to publish this link. One is I definitely want to be notified when the report is viewed. If you are using click to call, that's the call me now button on the presentations. You can enable that button. I'll disable it for today's discussion. And then pretty important here, if you've already got a relationship with this realtor partner, you want to make sure that they're in the loop on each step of the process. You want to make sure that they know that what you're doing for them, this co-branded presentation that you're building for them, is getting some traction. The best way to do that is those same alerts that you get that says a borrower is open your presentation, the realtor's going to get. So if you check this box, they'll get it. If you don't, they won't get it. Now, if you're using this for, you're courting a new realtor partner, you haven't met them yet, you probably want to leave this unchecked until you've had your conversation with them. That way you can put this as part of your value proposition. Now, finally, anytime you put out a rate, you got to put out a quote date and make sure that your rates are tied to a date so you don't get called on the carpet for a rate you can no longer support down the line. Now, last step here, generate the link. This is the link that you're going to send to your partner. This is a link you can share on Facebook, put in all the different social media channels if you want to. But you're going to literally copy this one and paste it into an email to your realtor partner, paste it into your social, wherever you want to share it. But this is the link that is not going to change for this presentation. So if you go back in and you change things like the down payment amounts, you change the rates because it's been sitting out there for a while and rates have changed, this link doesn't change. So anything you update inside Edge will automatically show when the person clicks on this link up here. So if you were to, for instance, publish this on Facebook as an open house presentation listing, and you go, it's been there for a month, and you go back in and you change the rates because rates are now different than they were a month ago, that same link is still going to be valid. You don't have to republish it. You don't have to do anything with it. It's automatically going to reflect your most recent changes inside Edge. Now, anytime you're doing an open house presentation, I would always highly advise you add a video component to it. Now, the reason is, everybody's got, an open house flyer. They've got a paper flyer that they can leave out at an open house. That's not what this is for. You can certainly print it, but this is actually an experience. This is an experience for both the prospective borrowers and for your realtor partner. Now, when you're first contact with a realtor partner, if you're trying to get their business versus you've already got a relationship with them, your video is probably going to be targeted towards the realtor partner initially. And you're going to talk about how you can change this based on the property. You can change it based on different pricing structures, different types of programs. But you're also going to tell them that you can redirect this video. You can record a new video that's aimed specifically at their clients versus at them. But it's a great place for you to be able to make that initial introduction without having to be at their office, without having to try and get a meeting with them. You're making this face-to-face introduction simply by recording a video. So I'd always highly, highly advise add a video to this. If you were to post it on social networks, if you were to send it out, put it on your web page, you want to make sure that your advice, your introduction goes with this presentation so they know who you are. They can tie it to you. In order to do that, hit add audio video like I just did. Now the live version does have a payment stream on it. So when we look at this ARM, and you can see I've got an incredibly high APR on this, the reason is I chose worst case, and you can see what's going on here. My payment after the 60th month, it starts adjusting and it just keeps going up, up, up. It actually hit the life cap right away. The only difference, and the reason I have different numbers of payments here and they're slightly off here, is because my MI dropped off. So it went down a little bit after 102 months. Now I'll show you how to battle that one in just a moment here, but I do want to show you the finalized presentation so you can see what it looks like. Now this is how it's going to look in a browser. Now inside the browser, it's going to be the ultimate experience for this. Now the other place people are going to open this is on their mobile devices. So when they click on this link from an iPad, from their iPhone, from an Android device, it's going to prompt them to install the Mortgage Coach Viewer app. It's a free install, doesn't cost them anything. But once they have that, they're able to pull up that specific presentation natively on their phone. Now, the reason I mention this and the reason why it's so important is when you're courting a realtor partner, part of your value proposition is, look, we're co-branding this. I'm going to do most of the work for this. You don't have to worry about that. But if you do want to post these at an open house, I'm asking you to print them. And the reason I'm asking you to print them is so we can stay in compliance. We both need to share in the cost of production for this. The best way for you to do it, print it out. It's costing you paper and ink. That's good enough for me. Now, the other thing about this is when a borrower or even the realtor partner opens this on their mobile device, it's now portable. When they're at the open house and they're talking to their borrowers and the borrower's looking at the house, they're really interested, the realtor can simply open up his phone and bring up your presentation and say, here's some pricing options. Here's what it looks like. I can, as a matter of fact, if you've got a video on it, that video comes up and explains the pricing options, explains your relationship with the realtor partner. And it's a very fluid experience for them to be able to deliver to their client without having to know the numbers. So this is your opportunity to extend your education advice far beyond what you can reach physically. Now, when you're ready to record a message, you're going to hit this record message button. And there we are, go Broncos. And you can see that it automatically shows you inside the camera. If you don't see your face in the camera, there's probably going to be a little button up in the top toolbar that's asking you to allow the mic and camera to be used by Edge. Click allow on that and you should see yourself. Now, if you still don't, there may be a problem with your settings. So to do that, to check those, just right click anywhere on the presentation and hit settings. And the two that you're most interested in are going to be these two on the right. But start on the left. Most times you're going to leave this one checked, enable hardware acceleration. If you've got a 15-year-old computer, you probably want to leave this unchecked, but anything within the last 10 years or so, it can handle hardware acceleration. So you're generally going to leave this checked. Now, if you do have a 15-year-old computer, you need to make a move. Go buy a new computer, ASAP. Now, Flash player settings, when you're looking at the privacy, it may be tagged for deny. And if it is, make sure and hit allow and check the box to remember it. This folder setting is how much local cache is this presentation allowed to use. I just leave it at the default. There's really no reason to adjust this at all. Now, the most important ones are selecting your microphone and your camera. Now, in order to do that, hit the drop-down box here, and it's going to give you your options for your different audio recording devices. So make sure and select the appropriate one. And let's see, let me get my live chat going. There we go. And then for my camera, you can see I've actually only got one camera on here, but you may have multiples. You might have a built-in camera. I'm on a Mac right now and it's on a dock, so I'm not necessarily using the internal camera. And you'll find that if you are using a laptop and it's on the dock and it does have a camera, you'll see that integrated webcam option there. Don't select that one because the lid's closed. It's not going to be able to record you. So if you are on a dock, you're going to need an external webcam plugged in, or just simply open your laptop so that it can see you. But make sure you've got the right camera selected and then hit close. And once you do that, you can hit record message, and then you'll see yourself up here in the window. Some quick tips on recording. Make sure and keep eye contact as much as you can. It's very important. This is going to give you that personalized experience with your realtor partner. And it's sometimes very difficult to keep eye contact because you keep wanting to look back at your reports and you keep wanting to look around. My advice to you would be get a little yellow notepad, little sticky notes, and write out some bullet points on what you want to discuss, and then stick that right behind your web camera. That way you don't have to worry about it. You can maintain eye contact. You still got a little reminder of what you're going to cover, and you can structure your video, a little bit better. You're going to be happier with it if you have a structure ready to go versus just kind of winging it. Now, you're going to get to the point where you're going to be able to wing it, but for the first couple, do that bullet point list. Make sure you give yourself prompts. Obviously you want to introduce yourself, your practice. You want to introduce your relationship with this realtor partner. Got to honor the realtor through here. They're going to see this too, and it's going to make it more shareable for them. They're going to want to share it. 3, you want to give some very cursory notes on what the products are that are covered here. And you want to make sure and let them know that you can change these to suit their needs. And then 4, make sure and honor the realtor partner one last time, and then a solid call to action at the end. Don't ask a question at the end. A question never works because people can't answer your video. So what I would tell you is make a statement. A solid call to action would be something like, you're going to have questions when you're done viewing this. Please call me at your earliest convenience so we can discuss them, and make sure you have the education needed to make a good mortgage decision for your future. It's so simple, but people miss this one. So you got to keep it in mind. Don't leave it as a question. Don't leave it up to the borrower to call you. Direct them to call you. Then you'll get more calls. Now, to record, all you're going to do is hit this record button right here. And you can actually leave your mouse in the same place. And when you hit record, you can use that same button to stop the recording. So for instance, I just started recording, and as long as I leave my mouse in the same place, when I'm done recording, I don't need to look down to find that button anymore. I can simply click it again, and my recording is complete. Now, once you've done that, it's automatically part of this presentation. So if I was to go back and take this link, copy it, and paste it into a browser, this is the experience that anyone clicking on the link would get. And you'll see that they get your disclosure. And then once they click that, your video comes up and starts talking to them. So it's going to be the same type of experience whether it's in mobile or in the browser. They're still going to get your disclosure in the beginning. Hey, Michael actually mentioned there's also teleprompter software that works really well. So that might be a great idea for those of you who are running into issues with how to do the scripting, how to maintain composure during the video so you're happy with it at the end. There's lots of different teleprompter softwares out there. They're really good. And you can run it in a little window that you run at the top of your screen, or you can run it on a separate device. I see a lot of people using their iPads for that. So just kind of some food for thought. Now, before we finish the call today, I do want to address this APR issue we were talking about earlier. Now, when you're doing an open house presentation, you can see we did show the payment stream earlier. Now, your origination system, the reason it's going to have a different APR than what we're showing here is the origination system does not predict future adjustments at all. So it's assuming a best case scenario. At the first adjustment point, it goes down to index plus margin in terms of the APR. That's a really low rate. That's actually below the note rate. So if you have very limited closing costs, you might find your APR is less than the note rate. Perfectly acceptable, but that's how your origination system shows it. Now, when you're presenting this type of presentation, what I might suggest is yanking one of these products out, because anytime you show an ARM, I would always show a best and a worst. That way you can show them, the payment's going to be the same in terms of what shows here, but the APR is going to be substantially different between the two. Now, in order to do that, you can simply go back into that product, and I'm going to go to my 5/1 arm. I'm going to go to my adjustment scenario, and I'm going to choose best case. Now, when you're doing a total cost analysis, it becomes more important because you're showing the long-term ramifications of the loan. But when you're doing an open house presentation, you can actually use best case, and it's going to be pretty acceptable. Everybody else out there is quoting the APR this way. So for an open house, I would say go ahead and use best case, or develop a custom case if you like. Now, question from Susan real quick. How do you highlight the presentation? Great question. So let me leave this page. Now, the way to highlight this is when you go to the last screen of your Edge Wizard, if you choose to preview the presentation, or if you're on the add audio video link, they're actually the same screen. One just has an add video button on it. But the preview of the presentation is different from what the client gets when they click on it. This is your preview, so you have a lot of control over what happens here. So for instance, you'll notice that when you're in preview mode, if you hover over any of these fields, they'll have a blue box around them. So now if you left click on them, they'll highlight. And whatever you leave highlighted is going to be highlighted when the borrower clicks on your link. The borrower can't highlight from their version of the link. You can do it from your preview or from your video recording screen. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that kind of leads into the Edge Live conversation, especially when you're doing a total cost analysis. There's a lot going on a total cost that's not happening on an open house flyer. Things like the closing cost details, reinvestment strategies, items that you want to bring to your borrower's attention. You can pop those out on your end, and they're going to pop out on your borrower's end almost in real time. It's literally a couple seconds apart. If you want to see how that works, because we don't have time to cover it today, if you want to see how that works, go to our knowledge base and just type in live. And there it is, how to use Edge Live. This is going to show you a video that shows you a side-by-side of what the borrower sees and what you're doing, so you can kind of correlate the two. But practice this with one of your colleagues. This is a great way to be able to drive the presentation for your borrower, to be able to point their attention to specific areas that you're talking about. And it's almost like doing a screen share. It's not a screen share, but it's almost like it, because the changes happen literally between 1 and 2 seconds, I would say, is the accepted average on this one. But it's a great way to really ensure that your borrower is looking at what you need them to look at as you're explaining this. Now, whatever you leave highlighted or whatever you leave popped out when you're done with your preview, that's how it's going to appear when your borrower clicks on the link. So if, for instance, if I'm doing a refinance presentation and I'm recommending that they reinvest the cost savings that I'm going to give them into a monthly principal reduction payment, I'm going to pop out that reinvestment grid, and then I'm going to close the presentation so that when they open it, that reinvestment grid is already popped out. That's the first thing they're going to see. They actually have to close that to get back to the rest of the presentation. So play around with this, get a good handle on what Edge Live does. You'll find that you actually use this more often than you think you would. When you use Edge Live and you make adjustments, you pop out, you highlight, that happens on the borrower's version, whether they're in the browser or on a mobile phone. So if they've got your presentation open on their iPhone and you come into your browser and open a preview and start highlighting things, it'll automatically start highlighting on their iPhone. It's one of those wow moments that just really allows you to just kind of sit back and look good. So you want to definitely learn about this and get some good detail on this. Practice with a couple of your colleagues, and you'll find exactly how long your lag time is between when you click something versus when it pops on their screen. I know that in my systems here, it's about 1 second. So I'm usually clicking on something as I'm in the middle of a sentence, so that by the time I finish the sentence, it's already popped out for my borrower. But that takes a little practice. You'll get it, though. Of course, if you need any additional information on this, we're always here to help at support@mortgagecoach.com. Just shoot us a quick email, and we can certainly help you with whatever you need. But it's a little past time today, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap today's call. There's one question left in the box here. Susan asked, can you switch the order of the products by pressing a button instead of doing them all over again? You can't switch the order of the products in that fashion, but what you can do is you can use that copy function to copy one product over another, and you can effectively move them around in your strategy. You are going to, if you have 4 products, you're going to have to overwrite one of them. One of them is going to have to be, redone. But if you only have 3 products, you can use that 4th slot as kind of a copy slot. So you can copy it over to there and then move it into the right slot you want it to be. But I want to say we have a video on that. I'll have to check on it, but if I do have one, I will make sure and send that to you, Susan. But thank you, everybody. I appreciate all the participation this morning. If you have any other further questions, please do contact us at support@mortgagecoach.com. We're always happy to help. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.